we do have our interview ready with 5 Gauge. That would be Chaith from the Absurd, who happened to get that free win over Apex Prime 2-0. I mean, were you guys worried about going into today's matchup that didn't really happen? Or are you pretty excited? I mean, what are your thoughts right now?
Hey, Storm and Heroix. Yeah, today we all woke up with our game face on and got our tough nut gear ready to go, proper attire and ready to go to war. So pretty much we were ready today to throw down. But yeah, ended up having some roster issues with Apex. And from what we understand so far, what happened was they need to get a sub. And that ended up not happening, or they decided not to go forward with the sub for whatever reason. And yeah, unfortunately, they had to drop out today. So
yeah, it's a little unfortunate that you guys weren't able to play. Of course, I mean, in my opinion, I thought you guys had the upper hand in that one. But I mean, that also was a pretty important match in terms of the season projections, where it could go into a position where if Apex had won it for whatever chance that might be, they would be also in the running at that point for a three-way tie. That would have been actually kind of confusing because, at that point it would have gone into whoever won the most matches for second place. And I don't know how that adds up. If I'm not mistaken, I think PZ has that, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, either way, it would have been kind of confusing because, in a head-to-head, you're talking about Spooky beating Apex, Apex beating PZ, and PZ beating Spooky. So
yeah, we think that PC firmly has the advantage going into this last couple weeks. Absolutely. And now that Apex is forfeited to us, it seems like PC's chances of getting into the LAN event are pretty much solidified, we think, at least. However, they do need to win their games, but we think they have a good chance of doing that. So they're heavily favored, at least in my opinion, to take that. So that's good.
I just want to shift to the season finals. I mean, you guys have already gotten your ticket there. You're already good to go. And we know that 55 have made it along with Vermilion. So have you guys looked into both of those teams very much? And if so, who are you guys wanting to go up against in that matchup? Because those two teams will play each other next week.
Well, you see, it's really, really early to say what team we'd be more favored to do well against or whatever would pick our matchups, because we're going to have a big paradigm shift coming before the LAN event. Everything's going to change. We have a balance patch dropping on the 26th, I believe, and we haven't had a chance, or we won't have a chance, to see any EU teams play from when the balance patch drops, when the meta changes, everyone re-gets their new builds and refines them. We're going to have to pretty much go in blind based on what they'll be running, what they found out is good. So we really have no idea which team we'd pick our matchups against or how to peg them and who is the bigger threat to us. So we don't really know, and there's no way to tell. And it's going to be a big scramble once the balance patch hits to find the best things.
Yeah, I mean, the season finals, you could argue that it's really going to come down to the team that's quickest to adapt. I mean, honestly, not even just in the 2.5 weeks that you guys have, because I mean, it is about 3 weeks that you guys have, but of course you'll be traveling for some of those days, so you won't really have too much of an opportunity, in that time frame. So I would say like a good 2.5 weeks that you guys will probably have, almost 3 weeks at that point for you guys to find builds. But I mean, that is a lot of time to figure stuff out. Not in the grand scheme of things. It's enough time for you to kind of find a direction you want to go in, but of course there's going to be things that you guys are going to miss. So I mean, I would argue that it would come down to the team that's quickest to adapt on the day of. I mean, do you guys feel confident that you guys are going to be able to do that kind of thing, pull that off?
100%. We have no idea what they're going to pull. So if they pull anything out of the bag, we have to really be able to counter them from match 1 to match 2. So we have no clue what they're going to run. They have no clue what we're going to run. It's going to be really all about who can counter each other on the day of, and really who can pull a better counter comp at the day of. Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Are you guys worried at all? I mean, for the most part, I mean, you're on NG, pretty much almost every composition you guys run. Nos is on Necro for almost any composition you guys run, and I know that you guys are capable of multi-classing, but for the most part, you guys are technically just on your mains for a majority of the game. I mean, a strong majority. Do you guys worry that maybe they'll find something that might counter those two classes, and you guys will be stuck in a position where you might not be able to be as effective as you might think you would be going into it at the moment?
That's a possibility always, especially when you have certain people who play and specialize in one specific profession. For example, like Nos is Necromancer to my engineer. Toker is very proficient on Thief and Revenant, and Wakey and Fanta are more of our multi-classers. But usually every meta, me and Nos play our respective professions, and we usually have been just fine on those. Even when Necromancer and Engineer were not in the best of spots, we still played it, and we still had very good matchups and very good odds in the pro tournaments with those classes. So we really do think that we have a really big advantage when we play our mains. And at the same time, too, look at the balance that's projected for the next period. We do think that Engineer and Necromancer are going to be in a fine spot. If anything, I think that Necro and Engie have the least worries of what their spot's going to be in the next balance
Certainly
patch.
Necromancer at this point
Yeah.
has no worries.
Yeah. I mean, looking towards, as he said, towards adapting with the new balance patch. Like he said, you guys multi-class, but do you think you're going to have a lot to bring out of that bag? Like you said, you're going to have to adapt when you're actually at the season finals to go from game 1 to game 2, depending upon what they're running. Are you guys going to be working around multiple things to bring into that, or just try to be the best at what you can at that point in time?
Yeah.
Like you specifically on NG, or are you going to pull out another class if you have to?
Basically, in the past, I've always had multiple builds on Engineer that I could pull out based on what they're running and stuff like that. Small modifications really matter. For example, like in the current meta, whether I run the Celestial Amulet or whether I run the Marauder totally changes the matchup. For example, when I practice with Toker, he's on his Revenant, I'm on my Engineer, he will beat me every single time that I run Marauder with his Invocation Revenant build with Berserker Amulet. And when I switch to Celestial, I win every single game, or 1v1, right? So it really changes the matchup. A small amulet switch, and that being it. Really, small modifications, small tweaks are really what it's going to be. So if you have that understanding, the intimate understanding of the classes to know which small modification to make will massively influence your matchups and really slant it in your favor. So it's going to be all about learning the small details of your class and the other classes too. And we think that pretty much when the new balance happens, we're going to be making our new comps then, and we'll definitely decide on having multiple strategies based on what the top things are. So basically strategies that they can run, what we're gonna do to counter it. We'll have many comps we can do. Probably we'll settle on 2 or 3 different setups and strategies, probably about something like that. And we think we'll be pretty prepared for when the actual land comes 3 to 4 weeks from now. Or 4 weeks from now, 3 from when the balance patch happens. We think that's enough time to get a couple comps and really play them well. So we think we're pretty confident.
And you guys do have an advantage over all of the other teams as well. I mean, you are the only team that has actually played in front of a live audience as a team together collectively. I mean, looking at Vermilion, 55, and even PZ or Spooky, none of those teams have been in the same position where they've played live together as a team in person in front of a crowd of people just watching you and looking at you the whole time in person, right in your face, and you can see them all. And do you think that actually has as much of an effect as people might assume it does, or does it have more or less, anything like that? Do you know?
It's a small factor. Small factor. I think that players at this stage in the game, it's hard to get them on tilt just because in a live audience, but it's true. Like there's things that happen to you psychologically you can't even really control consciously that happen when you're on a stage. For example, like I'll use an example. What would happen to me in Cologne when I was playing on stage? I have plenty of LAN experience. I've been to 3 events, and the 3rd event, I went to a LAN event. I was actually getting some nerves, and I was doing things mechanically in the game. For example, I'll use a real good one here. I've been using Healing Turret on Engineer for many years now, perfectly. It's total muscle memory. Don't even think about it. Goes up perfectly. But in the heat of the moment, I actually messed up the Healing Turret and didn't get the second overcharge off on me. And I was like, what? Like, this never happens to me. But it's only explained by the fact that your gameplay changes in a very slight way when you're on stage. And we do have the most LAN experience. We do, for sure, over anyone else. PZ does have LAN experience, but not as a team. They individually do, like Kpud, Java, or Kpud, Zeus. I'm pretty sure they do. They were at Gamescom a couple years back. And but I do think that it will go in our favor, but not a huge factor from that.
All right. Well, looking at a little bit of your matchups, next week, looking at Never Lucky, how are you feeling going against those guys? Kind of shifting back from the season finals, but you still got one matchup against a team, Never Lucky, who's gotten pretty darn good over the last few weeks. How do you guys think they might fare up against them? Any worries against going up against that composition?
We feel like the only thing that NA can really come up with right now is the typical double Revenant, double Mesmer X. You know what I mean? And we feel like whatever that that composition can be, we feel like we can handle it. I don't think there's anything out there right now that we would be surprised by. So I feel like we have a very strong chance of winning that match. And even in the worst case scenario, we do take a loss, it's not going to affect us going forward from here anyways. So we feel very carefree at this point. Obviously, having our ticket punched Next week, though, we're not underestimating anyone. We definitely have to play our best. And, if we go on tilt and don't get the things we need to do or we know we can do, then anyone can lose. That's for sure. So we're still in the game and we're still focused.
What kind of, we're talking a little bit about, a meta shift and talking a little bit as well about the direction that things might go in. What kind of meta do you guys feel the most comfortable in? I mean, you guys as a team, have the most experience, at least in my opinion. Playing together for the longest period of time. And you guys have seen a lot of these metas as a team. What kind of thing what kind of meta did you guys feel really comfortable in the past?
Basically, any meta that's not based around rezzing, we feel the strongest at. I think that our biggest strength on the Abjured is our mechanical skill when it comes to downing enemies first and staying alive. And I think that in any meta where it's not heavily focused on reviving, we'll be our strongest at, 100%. And I think it's looking like it's going to be what it's going to be. So we're going to be in a very strong point when the abilities for players to revive each other is much less. So we're actually looking really forward to the next meta. If it goes in the way we imagine it's going to,
right.
Anything can happen. Not all the changes have been announced, but we do notice a really heavy nerf to Bunker Mesmer reviving. So Bunker Mesmer reviving is going to be really reduced. Revenant, obviously, with quickness and is going to be reduced as well, too. So we definitely think that Mesmer Revenant spam will be less sustainable, for sure. So I feel like that strategy is going to definitely fall off a bit. And people that can get downs and stay alive and cleave bodies are really going to be at an advantage. And that's things like Necro and NG, what they really are strong at as well, too. Yeah. And let's not forget, guys, just because the Mesmer and Revenant reviving is really nerfed, there's still really good ways to revive people, that don't involve quickness. So
yeah, we've seen it in the past a lot. There's been a lot of times where you see the rezzing still at a very high potential, and it's just because it was so overpowered at the moment doesn't mean it's not going to still be viable in the future. But you were talking a little bit about how the meta might adjust to something that you feel more comfortable with in terms of, I guess, I'll use the word tankiness. Of course, with the amulets involving 3-stat combinations that have both toughness, vitality being removed, do you think? You were already saying that you think it will go in a certain direction. Do you think we might see more of an assassin meta, or do you think people will try to go more towards bruiser? Or do you think it'll be a mix of both, a little bit of support?
Bruiser for sure. Bruiser always prevails when people are not able to get rezzed, because bruisers usually have the best offense to defense ratio, the best mechanical advantage typically. Assassins, they function in a very all or nothing way. Bruisers are more reliable, so we definitely see a bruiser meta coming into play here, just because we're removing things like soldiers and implementing Paladin Amulet, which is basically still toughness and vitality, just in a less severe amount. Right now, a soldier's is 900 toughness, 900 vitality. Paladin will be 560 toughness, 560 vitality. It's still super sufficient enough to be tanky enough to be able to do damage and bruise properly. And we think that the meta will definitely head towards either Condi or Power Bruiser builds. But either way, things will die, and things will die relatively fast without any healing power toughness combinations. So Celestial's going to be out of off the table, so we definitely won't see any extended fights. It's going to be all about the mechanical skill and who can handle downstate better and get cleaves and stomps. So we think it's actually very exciting for us.
The thing about bruisers that usually makes them work, looking back at the Elementalist meta, back at DD, basically any build that's really used the Celestial Amulet to full effect is something that uses a lot of boons, things like Engineer, Dagger Ellie, even, the current Tempest, things like that. Mesmer even at this point. Are you worried that as a bruiser, as someone that has played a lot of bruiser in the past, if you're in that bruiser role with the availability of corrupts now, especially with Necromancer, a lot of those two changes with corrupt boon as well as I believe it's the Scepter auto that also got changed, where they're going to have a lot more availability of corrupt. They already have. Nas has already been playing around with a build that's insane with corruption. Are you worried maybe even a little bit about bruiser's state if people start using that as a possible counter?
We welcome other players to try and play Necro. Give it your best shot.
True.
So with that in mind, we do think Necromancer will also have a tougher time getting up. So when you go down as a Necro, it's pretty much lights out for you. At this point, the cleave will be real, and the fact that Necromancers get tunnel vision pretty easily. Still does pose a problem. I don't think Necromancer, it's just going to be the ultimate focus target to focus Necro, because they don't have Bunker Messers to revive them instantly. And in this meta currently, Necros get focused so hard, they have Revenants training them everywhere. And we're going to add Thief to that mix too. We're going to add Thief to the list of Revenants of people chasing around the Necro and trying to down him. And there's not going to be a Mesmer there to clean up. So there's not going to be any like saving throw for the Necro when he goes down. So that's going to be a really different dynamic. It's going to be all a game of cat and mouse with the Necro trying to kite and the Revenants and Thieves and everything trying to chase him down. It's going to be really centered around the Necromancer, I think. So, yeah, and if any really awesome revives can come out on the Necro, that's going to be a huge play, not like expected. Like, oh, and then Bunker Messer gets him up, proceed. It's going to be like, oh, and a res actually happened, which is actually very rare to see happen, and then the Necromancer can wipe the whole team or something like that. It's going to be a bigger turning point, which is pretty cool.
All right, well, any last words or shout-outs to your fans out there?
Shout-outs, everyone watching Twitch, I'll say once again, and thanks for watching the Pro League, and we hope for a great finish and a great Season 2.
All right, well, good luck, and we will see you next week for your matchup. That was Chaith, from the Abjured, joining us there for a little bit of preview on the future of their team.